We are all a bunch of Star Trek nerds, and we're
Yep.
gonna duke it out like we've never done on Kitchen Sink My Cross.
Looks like we all agree that Voyager's at the bottom.
Yeah. Their storylines, for one thing, were so ahead of their time. Like, even for Star Trek standards, like Star Trek's led the whole world in technology development and things like that. But and social stuff too. Like the original series is no chump when it comes to that.
Season 3 or 4 was like Year of Hell, and then the Borg and Species 8472, and then you start to I forget the other species that was on there too, but then eventually they start to get communicating with Earth and getting some hope, and then Barclay comes on there and just saves the day. And
so DS9 wasn't an exploration of space so much as it was an exploration of one's own self.
Okay, walk around Seattle, walk around LA. Tell me something about that that's not dark, icky, and nasty. Tell me, about, prostitution. Tell me about homelessness. Tell me about drug problems. All of that can be translated into DS9 and more.
Okay, welcome to another Kitchen Sink Microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt.
And I'm Casey Rochford, and we're bringing on a guest for a real fun one tonight. His name is Randy Jones. We go back to like 1993, and we've been major nerds ever since then, and probably long before.
I've had the same haircut since then.
That's true. Yeah, I cannot say that. Unfortunately, I've changed my haircut unwillingly. But tonight we thought we would do a fun topic about what is the best Star Trek series. Like,
all right,
of the first 5 that have run a full course, So we are all a bunch of Star Trek nerds, and we're gonna duke it out like we've never done on Kitchen Sink My Cross.
Well, okay. How about we lay out some ground rules? Like, what are the series that we can work with here?
Okay, so we're gonna obviously include the original series.
Yep.
Star Trek: The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. Even though it didn't start off being called Star Trek, it eventually became Star Trek Enterprise, and it followed the storyline, so it's in there.
It was definitely a Star Trek series, yeah. All right.
So, why don't we let our guest state his case first?
Okay.
What's your top 5, Randy?
In a very particular order, we'll start from the bottom because I make it interesting. And I've actually had this argument before with other people who have since discovered Star Trek. And I grew up watching it in the early 90s, and as you did, Casey, and that's just, we're used to that. So I'm going to start with the worst one, number 5, Voyager. And do you want me to defend each point, or just list them, just work my way up the list?
Just go through the list first, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Voyager is number 5. 4 is Enterprise. 3 is Next Generation. 2 is the original series. And number 1 is Deep Space Nine.
Can I just, agree with you right now?
Sure, that's fine with me.
Whoops.
Wait a minute. Wait, is that your exact lineup?
Yeah, it is.
It is, really?
Yeah, it totally is.
Okay, so I'm gonna be the one defending my dissertation, I guess.
Well, as long as the monkeys aren't on that list, you're okay.
So Randy's is from 1 to 5, Deep Space Nine, original series, Next Generation, Enterprise, and Voyager. Eric is a carbon copy, so I will be defending the hierarchy 1 to 5 of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, original series, and Voyager. That's where I'm coming from.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like we all agree that Voyager's at the bottom.
Yeah.
Not that it was a bad series. Like, it actually was kind of okay. But compared to the rest, yeah, it couldn't hold a candle to the others.
I remember watching it when it came out, and I went off to college around 1999, and I think Voyager still had a little bit of a run left to it, and I stopped watching it. And it's not because of college. I just got bored with the Borg plot lines, and it just was kind of like, okay, great. So they're just milking this to death, and then I saw the finale, and the finale was probably one of the worst finale episodes I've seen, aside from Turnabout Intruder on the original series. But then again, they were canceled, and we didn't have a proper finale back then. If we could do another 2 more seasons of TOS, that would have been a different story. But yeah, Voyager. I mean, I like Janeway. Picard was blah. The Doctor was, I think, probably the most interesting character there. Tom Paris, easily forgettable. Harry Kim, the 7-year ensign, also easily forgettable. 7 of 9, a ratings booster if you're into blondes with D cups, but other than that, she didn't really do it for me. I had a friend who called her Psycho Barbie. No offense to the ladies, but I mean, this was, that's just what the colloquial term was used back then. Otherwise, yeah, the Borg kids, and it was nice to have Q in there, just to kind of shake things up. But otherwise, it's like, season 1, Kazon, Ragheads, season 2, I forgot it was that, not that important. And season 3 or 4 was like Year of Hell, and then the Borg and Species 8472, and then you start to, I forget the other species that was on there too, but then eventually they start to get communicating with Earth and getting some hope, and then Barclay comes on there and just saves the day, and then Janeway, does her thing and goes back and does this time warp thing or whatever the hell it is, and changes the outcome and gets them home way earlier than they were supposed to get home, which is a great plot device. But on the other hand, it's like, great, so they're taking the easy way out. It's almost as bad as the one for Enterprise, where they get shortchanged with that quick, hastily put together ending that like zips forward 10 years. And yeah, I mean, that one I didn't like either. But actually, if you could rate finale episodes, Voyager would be probably the second to last. Enterprise would have been the worst. But yeah, just Voyager for me. Yeah, bottom of the list here. And I'm sure maybe we all can probably agree at the similar plot points. Maybe there's other things that I've missed that you guys were like, I really think that this part of Voyager sucked because of X, Y, and Z. But I'm just gonna shut up for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, apart from being Gilligan's Island in space, right off the bat, I was like, you introduced this character Kess, who has like a very short lifespan, and she's already, obviously halfway through it. And how long do you think this character is going to last? Do you really have that much hope for your whole series if you've got a character that's going to die in a few years? So yeah, like I have to admit, I've seen every episode of these 5 series except for Voyager. I haven't actually seen all of Voyager.
I might be kind of in the same realm in that regard.
Yeah. So I mean, you could make the argument that I'm not giving it a fair shake, but I mean, I've seen enough of it.
Yeah. Barkley, like he's a little bit of a Mary Sue, but I do love the guy. Like he's one of my favorite characters. Um,
Yeah, he's a
yeah,
funny guy,
yeah,
and
he's
he was
good.
great as Mad Dog in the A Team. But
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, A Team. Totally different thing.
yeah,
Yeah, he was in that.
hmm So okay. Um, you and I, Randy, agree that DS9 is number one. Um, why don't we duke it out with Casey on that one? Because
yeah.
Casey, what's yours?
Okay.
Next Generation.
Okay.
I I don't think I've ever seen anything that's topped it. I'm excited for Picard. I wasn't going to shell anything out to that CBS All Access for Discovery, but I'll do it for Picard.
I'll
Yeah,
give you my password.
we'll come back to this and argue after that series is finished.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
That's fine.
so basically, where I'm coming from with Next Generation is that their storylines, for one thing, were so ahead of their time. Like even for Star Trek standards, like Star Trek's led the whole world in technology development and things like that. But and social stuff too. Like the original series is no chump when it comes to that. But
That's true.
when you got to the Next Generation, you saw stuff that only recently we've started being kind of okay with, and most people still hate. And I'm talking about like trans people, like when Riker fell in love with like an
Yep.
androgynous being and stuff. And there was
Yep.
where Beverly Crusher fell in love with the Trill, who then the host died and got switched to another gender, and it was like, oh wow, that sexuality is like really on the bend here. I really liked how progressive that was, and everything was episodic. You didn't really need to see the episode before to know what was going on, unless it was to be continued or whatever. But for the most part, it was a really strong standalone series where Deep Space Nine was very much kind of a big flow that was all like centered in one place, and it lost that exploration. I mean, yeah, they got the Defiant later on, but they really didn't go that far. They just went through the wormhole a bunch.
Well, so DS9 wasn't an exploration of space so much as it was an exploration of one's own self. Hence
Or
the
humanity.
the religious aspect and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely ranked number 2 for me because there was a lot of good episodes, but I also think it had a lot of filler episodes in there too. And I didn't see a lot of Next Gen. I don't know. That's just me.
Season 2?
Writer's strike.
Oh my God. Shades of Gray in
or the Neutral Zone, or that one episode, and see the season finale episode of first season Next Gen where the guy's head explodes.
Oh, that gave me nightmares. That was good though.
I mean, I enjoyed Q, but hiding Q was kind of a bag of cheese balls. But having Q in season 2, bringing up the Borg, like, okay, this could be fun. And as we saw, that's how the Borg were introduced into the franchise. I think that was a great start there. I mean, there were some good episodes. There were some episodes that were scripts originally written for the Star Trek Phase 2 from the original series from Roddenberry.
Yeah,
like The Child.
The Child. Oh man, that was terrible.
Well, so Riker and Deanna just replaced them with Decker and Ilea, and there you go.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's how that turned out. My daughter's orbiting around me a little bit here, seeing what we're doing, watching the screen. I said, "Whoa, there's people on there."
my daughter's hanging out here too.
Well, your daughter's got more hair than my daughter. So, my thing for DS9 is that, I guess I acknowledge season 1, season 2 of DS9 may not have been perfect, but you really needed that character development to see what was going on with these people before we really got into the nitty gritty, and the writers weren't quite sure where they were going with this, and did get into season 2 and 3. Hannah said, "What's that?" Yeah. Oh, okay. So she's wants me to put something on her Google Play. Let me finish my argument here, and I'm going to step over there and do that really quick. But yeah, season 1, season 2, you needed the character development. You needed to see O'Brien with Tosk, and you needed to see Kira go through some of those more religious episodes to kind of get a good background and see that, hey, she's damaged goods. And I may be a little bit spoiled right now because I'm coming straight off of freshly watching What We Left Behind, the documentary. But if you look at what DS9 was doing for TV and what the writers were doing, the writers weren't necessarily writing the show anymore for fans. They were getting hate mail, and the fans were tuning out. And, you know, I remember talking with people when I was in junior high school, when I was in high school, and they're like, oh, yeah, I don't like that. That's a really dark, nasty, icky show. Like, you tell me, okay, walk around Seattle, walk around LA, tell me something about that's not dark, icky, and nasty. Tell me, you know, about, you know, prostitution. Tell me about homelessness. Tell me about drug problems. All of that can be translated into DS9 and more. Murder mystery, schemes, politics, and of course, religion. But pretty much the whole entire human condition, even Quark getting a sex change. And, you know, the only thing that was really stopping them from going as far as some other shows have gone today was probably a couple of, dare I say it, white TV execs who were afraid of rocking the boat. You know, this whole story about Avery Brooks not being able to get the Casey Rochefort look minus the goatee there until the 3rd season in, or the fact that they couldn't let Garak be gay and have an interlude with Dr. Bashir. I mean, that would have been a hell of a plot twist to watch, and I think that would have been just excellent for the show. They did let Jadzia have the same-sex kiss, but, you know, let's face it, everybody in the Bible Belt loves lesbian porn, so I mean, that would fly anyways. And by the way, you guys are sipping on stuff. I'm totally stone sober, so this is how I normally talk, even when I'm in the office. So, but yeah, Deep Space Nine for me, I think, is just the ultimate show. You've got action, you've got drama, you've got romance, you've got comedy, you've got suspense, you've got murder, you've got mystery, you've got war, you've got peace, you've got pretty much every single genre of television ever made, all combined into 7 seasons of holy shit, this is awesome. But yeah, it does take a while to get into, and I think that's why people are rediscovering it for the first time today. It has some of the highest viewing numbers on Hulu and Netflix and even CBS All Access. People are rediscovering it, or they're discovering it for the first time, and they're like, wow, this show is amazing, and it's meant to be binge watched. I mean, Nana Visitor has said this multiple times on, you know, at conventions and whatever, but yeah, DS9 is a show that I binge watch all the time. I've got an episode of it streaming on my phone, on my computer, somewhere. I'm always running it, along with a couple other choice shows that I really enjoy, such as MASH and a few other ones that are standalone classics that few people these days seem to appreciate. So whenever I have somebody ask me the question, you know, hey, are you a Star Trek fan? Like, is the sky blue when there's no clouds out? And I'm like, okay, well, what series should I watch? And I'm like, well, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can watch them in order and start with TOS and work your way through, or you can watch Deep Space Nine and then branch out from there, because I guarantee you, if you get through all 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine, you're going to be a fan of the whole entire series either way you go, because you get a taste of TOS with Trials and Tribulations. You get the Next Generation tie-over. Voyager starts during DS9 Season 3 with the send-off from Quark's bar. That's going to be very familiar, getting you into Voyager to kind of help as a launching point. I mean, it all kind of ties in a little bit. You know, it gives you the positive outlook of what we should be as a species in the future, but it also shows you how horribly dark, deviant creatures we can be, like in The Pale Moonlight, when Sisko goes off and has Garak kill the Romulans. You know, the famous internet meme, the Romulan that goes, "It's the fake!" That's the episode. but it and it shows you baseball. I mean, you even got a sports episode. I mean, that's a lot better than Riker and Tasha going off to the holodeck to play. What is it? Parisi's squares, and then like Wesley breaks his arm or something. I don't know how that went, but anyways.
Come on, play Dom Jot.
And Worf is on there. You've got Klingons. Everybody loves the Klingons. You don't have the Borg. Thank goodness.
Worf's on everything.
Yeah.
He's on a lot of stuff. But
Worf even made his way into the TOS. I mean, not as Worf, but he was there. His grandfather was in the TOS.
Oh yeah, Colonel Worf, Star Trek 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was across the board.
Yeah,
Jeffrey Combs played so many fun characters on DS9, and he even played Shran on Enterprise. I wish they'd pick him up for Discovery and use him on a couple, somewhere in there too. He's just an absolute awesome actor. But yeah, just DS9 just kind of ties it all together. I mean, they bring in the 3 original Klingons from the original series, and they redress them, but they bring them in for a couple of epic Klingon episodes as well. Kor, what was the other one? Koloth and Kang. Yeah, those 3.
Yeah.
All the actors since have died, but those were some of the better episodes of the series too, especially in the earlier seasons. But everything just kind of ties in with DS9 if you take take a look and watch it through that way. But I think it's a great starting point for the new fan, and I think it is just in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think it's probably the best Star Trek series produced to date that we've seen as a full series, and because we obviously can't comment on the other ones that are still in production. That's my argument. I'm going to stick to that and drink some of this sweet tea.
Yeah, to its credit, I definitely love that Deep Space Nine took this, notoriously utopian universe that Gene Roddenberry made and showed the dark side of it too. It was like, hey, look, there's still shadows even in a utopia, that there's no perfect situation. There's always conflict. There's always war. There's always religion rearing its ugly head. That was a really cool thing that Next Gen really didn't touch on too deeply was the religion stuff. So I definitely, I mean, it made my number 2. But what do you got to say about it?
I wouldn't say it's a dark side. I'd say it's more shades of gray. That's kind of what defines DS9. There is no, because in TOS, TNG, there's the good guys, the bad guys. It's pretty clear. But in DS9, there are no good guys and bad guys. Hell, even Sisko does some terrible things because he thinks that's what's needed for the greater good. And the Garrick and Quark and some of these other characters, they're kind of like a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. Like sometimes they do things that are altruistic, sometimes they do things that are terrible, and that's human. And proper sci-fi speaks to the human condition. And, that's what I love about DS9 is how human it is. How gray it is. Like there are no good guys and bad guys. Like everybody is good sometimes and bad other times.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. There was definitely like, the whole Garrick dynamic. Like sometimes he seemed like they were on the same side, and sometimes he was, like lurking in the shadows or whatever. And Quark is Quark and all that stuff. But I mean, you kind of had some of that in Next Generation. Like Q was like definitely a mischievous little cretin that was always like making things a little worse, but he could have just obliterated them,
that's true, but that only occurred for a few episodes. DS9 had that thread running constantly through it, and that wasn't present in The Next Generation.
Yeah.
And plus, Sisko kicked Q's ass, so.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Picard never hit me. I'm not Picard.
Oh yeah.
So, what's your argument for the original series? Because in my take, like, and maybe this is kind of unfair, but there was less of it for one thing, so it's a little hard to judge like what its real potential was, and it was the first of its kind, so it's got limitations in that it was breaking new ground. But all in all, like, I wasn't as gripped. I was in a state of non-grippedness about most of it. And like, do you guys have like just kind of the nostalgic take, like, hey, it was kind of the first, so it was like really something special, or was there actually something that really spoke to you?
I guess I'll start. That's a series that I first started watching as a kid. I remember sitting at the dinner table and it being on a tiny black and white TV while we were eating, and so I grew up watching reruns of that and reruns of MASH on Channel 13 in Tacoma. And anyways, TOS is, I think it's along with DS9. I have an easier time going back to watching any season of the original series for the most part, except for one episode, Spock's Brain. But and actually, it might even be the Empath as well. But the rest of it, I mean, if you take a look, yes, there's some nostalgic factors there where it's like it's the original, it's where it all started. You know, you can. You've got Gene editing the scripts. You've got DC Fontana writing stories. You've Gene Kuhn producing and Matt Jeffries designing, and it's the classic 1960s look to it, and so there's all that going on. But if you take a look at the stories, and I've had this discussion with another friend of mine too, because I have a friend who doesn't buy into the fact that Star Trek Discovery is not canon. But if you take a look at it from a story perspective, and you can put any of those stories in any set dressing and maybe even change the characters up a bit, but the stories, I think, really stand the test of time. I mean, if you look at some of the earlier ones like Balance of Terror, that's a submarine hunt out of World War II. And you've got the drama and the suspense and the waiting going on with that, and you're on edge there with the writing of that. You've got other episodes where it dives into the human condition. It looks at things, and while space Nazis aren't exactly a great idea in some episodes as a plot device, I'm thinking of the episode Patterns of Force. The idea is still there. There's still a morality play in space, but I'm arguing that you can take mostly any of the original series episodes, change out the special effects, put them with different actors, take the plot lines and change them up, or take the plot lines, keep them the same, but put in different actors there, and the stories will hold like a Shakespearean play. That's how I feel about that, because it's original 60s science fiction. They were doing things before that you couldn't do on TV. And I know a lot of people say, oh, gee, well, Star Trek is so groundbreaking because of that. Well, it's true. It is. I mean, how else can you talk about racism in the 1960s? You have to do it with some kind of a format and a platform that isn't obvious. How do you talk about Vietnam without making it look like you're talking about Vietnam? How do you talk about women's rights and equality? And while they didn't talk about any of the sexuality issues that we face today, they did cover prostitution. They did cover space pimps. They covered religious zealots in the form of space hippies. All of those things that we even have to deal with today. It's all right there. Yeah, it looks cheesy. Yeah, goofy looking costumes and short skirts and go-go boots. Okay, whatever. But it's the stories. It's the stories. And so that's why I actually put that above TNG as number 2 on my list.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point. Like, I remember that episode where there was a I don't remember the name of the episode, but there was a race of beings who were black on one side and white on the other. And
Let that be your last battlefield.
Yeah. And that stuck with me. That was a powerful episode.
Oh yeah, that was like that was just the perfect analogy for what we face in our world even to this day, where people were like, oh, you've got black on the left side and I've got black on the right side, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
You know, it just showing how ridiculous that is with, you know, tongue-in-cheek, you know, like anyone can point to that and say, oh, that's silly, but then they don't even maybe register in their own head that they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is pretty
that was a brilliant way of illustrating the ridiculousn's of
it plants the seeds of doubt in bigotry, I think.
Yeah. And didn't the original series have the first interracial kiss?
Yep.
On TV?
It did, depending on which actor or actress you talk to about it. If you talk to Nichelle Nichols, who's a bit more honest about it, it was the first interracial kiss. If you talk to Bill Shatner, he might say something otherwise. And I think there's some stories behind it about how who was supposed to actually do the kiss, but you know, Shatner being Shatner is like, no, I'm going to do the kiss, and it's so I think it was supposed to have been like between Spock and Uhura originally. You have to do some research on that. Don't quote me for sure, but yeah, first interracial kiss, first, you know, Russian on American TV, although he was made to look like Davy Jones a little bit, I guess. First black woman who had something interesting to do, and while her character at first was like more of a telephone operator, she expanded out a little bit and she grew and you learned a little bit more. Although I wish they would have given her a first name in the series, as well as with I don't think Sulu got his first name until like the movies. But you know, taking people from different nations on the same planet, plus incorporating an alien who is half human but an alien nonetheless. People working together, you know. I mean, we come from a land of nation states where, hey, we're the Americans, and over there's them commies, and we're gonna keep these missiles here and keep you guys away. And everybody's going around doing bomb drills. I remember doing duck and cover drills when I was in elementary school. We still had those film reels that showed that stuff, and you know, showing some hope that, you know, the world actually isn't that big of a place, and we all can get along fine if we want to, and do great things. So, gosh darn it, let's do it instead of, you know, bombing brown people and imposing your beliefs on other folks. I don't mean to go that route with this with your guys' thing, but
no, it's totally relevant, because that's what Star Trek's whole point is to get people talking about the here and now, and having this allegory to point to, you know, like, well, look how perfect things could be if we just all got along, you know?
That's again why DS9 is the best series, because it wasn't perfect.
Well, you know what else wasn't perfect? Was Enterprise. And
that's true.
And that's what I really enjoyed about it. Predominantly, I really enjoyed that Archer, you know, the lead, you know, like the guy that everyone was supposed to look up to, lost his shit. Like when the Xindi like blew up a big chunk of Earth, man, he went nuts. Like he turned into like this rebel outlaw, and he was just a complete badass from that point. He completely changed. Like most characters are pretty static, but he was dynamic. Like he went from some like goody two shoes with a beagle to some dude that might as well have been wearing like a cut off jean jacket vest with like biker gloves on, you know, like he was a real badass when he had to be. It was like you messed with the wrong guy. And I never saw that in any other captain. Like, every other captain was like cool-headed and, you know, diplomatic, and Archer was just like, you know what, you pissed me off, now you got it coming. So I mean, yes, they took some liberties with changing the past a little bit, but I really liked the way they explained things. Like, take the Klingons, for example. All of a sudden, before the original series, they've got the brow ridges, and the brow ridges go away, and then they come back. But then they introduced this thing where they had that virus, and the only thing that saved them was injecting human DNA, and all of a sudden, you know, this hyper span of evolution happens where they lose their brow ridges and kind of become wussies or whatever. But you know, I thought that was clever. They had a way to make the Klingons familiar to the people that were coming into Star Trek more recently, and explain it away to the diehard, long-lasting fans. And with the Borg, they never actually said we're the Borg, so it could stand to reason that the history books just kind of missed, you know, like, who these guys were. That one's a little bit of a stretch, I'll admit, but yeah, you know, throwing the Borg in there was probably just more of a ratings grab. But I think they explained it away a lot better than, I don't know, you look at Discovery where the Klingons all of a sudden have a different language.
Hey, wait.
Same
no
language.
Discovery.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Not finished yet.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why I actually like almost put Enterprise as my second, but I threw it in the third just because Deep Space Nine is really deep, and that kind of won it over for me as far as that tiebreaker. But all in all, I actually kind of liked the stories. I just thought it was all around a pretty polished series. I mean, yeah, it had a few weak points, but I think, you know, the storylines were all in all, like, definitely better than what Voyager had to offer, you know.
That's true.
So I mean, that's where I came from with that. So I mean, what are your gripes? I mean, you guys put it like next to last, so was it
Next to last, yeah. Well, I mean, excuse me. Enterprise seemed to follow a similar pattern of DS9 and Voyager, where, you know, it took a little bit of time to catch its footing. But I think that Enterprise has some qualities in it that make it better than Voyager, and because, you know, you've got let's see. So you've got T'Pol in there, which is, although she's not the first Vulcan in Starfleet per se, but she adds this really interesting dynamic that's similar to Kirk and Spock, but she's more of a badass kind of a Vulcan that doesn't take shit off of anybody, where Spock is more of an analytical, you know, like, fascinating, let me think about that, let me do my research. She more or less shoots from the hip. As a side note, a friend of mine visited the wardrobe department down at Paramount when they were finishing up season 4 of Enterprise, and her cat suit is about 1.5 feet long when hanging on the rack. Okay, moving on. Phlox, I thought, was a very interesting, multi-dimensional character in terms of the way he portrayed, or John Billingsley portrayed him on the show. Just a very different approach from the standard Starfleet doctor. You know, the benign Dr. Crusher with, okay, I'm going to get my tricorder out and give you 2 cc's of this, and then Dr. Crusher's gone for the episode. You know, John Billingsley took that character, I think, and really did a good job, much in the same way that Robert Picardo took the Doctor and let him evolve as a sentient being almost on the show there. So I like the Doctor a lot. Trip was kind of fun, but I felt like he was basically Dr. McCoy as an engineer, a little bit, where it's like, they're trying to bring back D. Kelly a little bit in there to get that, damn it, Captain, whatever. But I don't know. There were some good points and some bad points, but then the whole trip and T'Pol thing, I didn't really like. That didn't feel right for me. What was it? The temporal Cold War with Future Guy, and he would show up once in a while, and on like the transporter pad or somewhere, or on the Zindi ship or something, and then he would. So there's a Future Guy who would appear, and that like I thought was supposed to been some kind of a big huge plot device for the whole entire series when I first started watching. I thought, okay, so we're gonna be doing something with time travel for the series maybe, but that wasn't the case. And then the other guy who was the actual time traveler who took Archer to the 29th century. I remember the one scene where there was a book on this bookshelf that they pulled off, and it said the Romulan Star Empire, and Archer was like, what is that? And it was so obvious getting into like, towards the end of the season. It's like, we're going to have the Romulan War that was talked about in the original series. And, in Next Gen, once or twice it was cited. Because they had that episode where they showed up and there was a Romulan warbird and they got that mine stuck to the hull and they had to go out and pull the mine off and all that. And T'Pol was freaking out. And so it was just obvious where it was going to go. And everybody was like, yes. All the fans were like, yes, let's do the Romulan War. Let's see what that does. And part of it, I think, was that the fans who were coming off of DS9 was looking for a replacement, almost to the point where it was like, a heroin addict has to go to a methadone clinic. I mean, we were looking for that same kind of like connection. It was, DS9, the Dominion War, and the characters, and the characters were developing on Enterprise, and they were going just fine, I think, for the most part. Some of them maybe were miscast, one or two, but Scott Bakula turned out to be a damn good captain. I agree with that. And he was also in an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, by the way, in case you ever watched that show. But yeah, it was, they got the ending that they didn't deserve because the show got canceled, and it was really sad. And all of the people who worked on The Next Generation and DS9 and Voyager and Enterprise, like Mike Okuda and Rick Berman and all those folks, Doug Drexler, they were all out of jobs. And it was kind of sad because they were doing some damn good work behind the scenes. And all of us, hardcore fans, pretty darn sad when they got the short end of the stick there. And some of the actors were pretty pissed too. I remember hearing Jolene Blalock was pretty darn upset about that as well. But yeah, no, it's a good show. It was getting there. It's just, it's unfortunate, but because it was kind of incomplete, it's below TNG, but it's still above Voyager because it's Voyager just kind of peters out towards the end there and just blah.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to say like the ending of Enterprise was definitely rushed, and the whole hologram or holodeck thing with Riker and Troy was kind of like, okay, like maybe that's a ratings grab too, like here let's inject some really loved characters into this and maybe that'll save it. But what really saved it for me, it was like a goosebumps moment, was Archer's speech at the end, which like led into space, the final frontier, like that was like, oh dude, it like works, like it flowed. And it was like, oh, all of Enterprise actually kind of worked up to the whole introduction, like the first thing you heard when you watched Star Trek ever. I thought that was like a really strong, powerful moment, and it kind of made up for the lackadaisical way that the last episode was thrown together for me.
You mean Riker trying to figure out why he made his decision on the Pegasus for 2 hours?
Yeah. Call me sentimental. I don't know.
I don't know.
It
Yeah.
felt powerful to me to hear like the origin of that speech that was carried through so many Star Treks.
Yeah.
So Eric, you haven't really spoken about Enterprise. What do you have to say about that?
Man.
Yeah. It's been a long time.
So I was sold to Enterprise on the basis that it was going to be jumpsuits and t-shirts and people just dirt and grime and getting down and dirty, and it wasn't like that, and that kind of pissed me off because
Well,
I
they
was
did have a
expecting
pop song for the theme song. Doesn't get much more t-shirt than that.
well, but the series itself, I was expecting it to be like a bunch of people, engineers, like rummaging around in the dirt and in greasy machines and stuff, and it, the
I
first
mean,
episode,
shit was falling apart though.
huh?
Shit was falling apart though. Like it wasn't
Well,
perfect.
it was, but it was falling apart in a predictable way, like to further the story, and so you know that kind of bothered me because I was expecting like Alien meets Star Trek, and I didn't get that, and kind of bothered me. So I don't know. I mean, it was a good series though. Like in time, it came into its own. But what we got wasn't what was sold to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely could have been a lot better. I think if it were done today, um, instead of the series I won't mention again,
Mhm.
I think hands down it would be the better like prequel premise, because it was so much farther ahead. It was like we were just getting out there, we were just getting our feet wet.
Well, and
um
that was the thing. That's what was sold to us, the viewers, and I didn't feel that.
Because you had the Vulcans there suppressing the humans, saying, oh yeah, you humans, no, you're not ready to go out into space. That Soval character, remember him? He
Yeah.
was always there to like put a wet blanket on the whole thing. It was just, oh no, you humans, no, you're not allowed. Nope, you're not ready for space. No, stay on Earth. And it took a lot of convincing and that's sort of how the T'Pol character came on the show. It's like, well, I guess we'll have our observer to check on you guys, who'll report back and make sure that you humans know what the hell you're doing. And that was kind of a drag for the first season. It was just like it was either something was broken, or Soval was around the corner telling Captain Archer that he can't do this or that, or T'Pol was being an absolute, I'm not going to say it, but she was just, well, sir, it's my duty to tattletale on you because, I'm a Vulcan and I don't work for you directly, but, or they had the future guy, or, the Shran finally, the Andorians came along. And I like the Andorian arc as it improved throughout the series, by the way, too. That was
Yeah.
to the show. But like the
I
first
like that
season,
too. Yeah.
just Soval was just, no, you're not going into space. You're staying in, we're the experts on space. And that changed when they went to that planet and discovered the secret Vulcan spying station. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
yeah, I think the only reason it kind of lost steam for me was that it changed its style. It went from being episodic to being kind of a serial thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When the whole Zindi thing started, it was very much a one big long episode all the way to the end, basically. Yeah. And I just think changing up the format was maybe like a poor choice, but it was a good story. So
it was a good story, yeah, but maybe it was too much of an arc too soon.
Yeah, like that would have been a good movie or something. If they, but
DS9 did the same thing, by the way.
But they did it gradually.
True.
Yeah. It felt more organic with Deep Space Nine the way they did it.
Yeah.
It was kind of, it started in the background and then it crept its way forward a little bit, and they still maintain that episodic feel. Even though what I feel were a lot of like filler episodes, like all the holodeck digressions, like Vic Fontaine and all that stuff, like I could do without that. But like it was pretty well done, because like Randy was saying, it had a lot of the classic writers working on it and stuff, and it was still very much like an extension of Roddenberry. It was still fresh from that era. So
yeah,
definitely a strong series. So I don't know, we should probably see if anyone's changed their minds. How about you, Eric? Have you changed your hierarchy at all?
No, I still think that DS9 is the best. But they're all good. Like, I mean, it's only the best by a tiny margin. So yeah. Although I have to say, I want to interject right here and say Pulaski sucked. That was a bad idea. Crusher was hot. Deanna Troi wasn't really that remarkable. Anyway, yeah, that's my thought. It's my 2 cents.
And how about you, Randy? Any change? You want to go against Eric at all, or you guys gonna just agree across the board?
I think we're still in agreement. I mean, this is kind of the way I felt about these shows for years, and this is a great discussion, and it's just kind of fun to go over.
Yep.
It might be, worth a several episode thing to do. I don't know if you guys are up for it, but like I'd like to look at each series and talk about, who the best character was in your mind versus who the worst character was on each series, and then why. And because it's not everybody thinks Wesley Crusher was the worst in Next Gen. Some people thinks it was Tasha. Same thing with Enterprise. Same thing with Enterprise. Was it Hoshi, or was it Mayweather, or was it Trip, or was it Archer? Which one was the worst character? Voyager, Harry Kim, or whoever the hell the other people were. You know what I mean? DS9. What was the worst character Jeffrey Combs played, or who was the most useless person on the show to be on there? Was it Jake Sisko, or was it Dr. Bashir? I mean, that kind of stuff. That might be an interesting conversation to have too, as well.
Yeah.
But basically, my list is staying the same.
Yeah, well, I think I'm as much as we like to say how open-minded we are here on Kitchen Sink My Crossfeed, we're being pretty damn stubborn about our Star Trek.
Yep. Oh yeah.
That's just how fans are, I think. I mean, whether you're a Star Wars fan, or if you got into the new Battlestar Galactica, or I was actually really hesitant to watch that because I'm more of a Star Trek purist. I've always been, so I'm not really up on Star Wars like a lot of other folks are, and I kind of scoff at it a little bit, like, oh, that's pedestrian sci-fi. That stuff that's pew 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 and big things in space that go pew pew pew. So that's not interesting for me. So no offense if any of you are Star Wars guys, but I've got friends who are sci-fi fans all across the spectrum, from the War of the Worlds all the way through Buck Rogers and all of that. And yeah, we're stubborn in terms of what we like. And some people are like, I've got a friend who is 10 years younger than me. I'm 38, and he is an avid Star Trek Voyager fan because he grew up watching Voyager when he was like he's 20. I think he was about the same age that I was when I saw DS9 when that was out. So his Star Trek that he grew up on was Voyager, and he's like, Voyager's my favorite. Janeway is the best. And I'm like, I'm not going to argue with you about that because I see where you're coming from. So
I guess people like that could exist. Yeah.
Yeah. And Star Wars, like you brought up Star Wars, like that is a cowboy movie. It's a Western.
Yeah.
It's not sci-fi, but maybe we'll go into that later.
Star Trek versus Star Wars kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like sci-fi versus Westerns, like if it's in space, is it sci-fi? I disagree, but it's my own opinion.
Cowboys with swords.
Laser swords, by the way.
Laser swords.
Yeah.
Then you had your deep sea sci-fi like Sequest, which had the
Star
Wars theme. It was just played a little slower.
Yeah.
Note for note. I swear, it's note for note. It's the same theme.
Wow. I gotta check that out now. Yeah.
Well, I guess we should probably wrap it up on that note then.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah. We
conversation.
If anyone's curious, I tallied up. So each of us, we had our number 1 through 5 pick, and I gave them scores.
Okay.
Respectively 3, 2, 1, 0.5, and 0. Voyager was a big fat 0.
Yep.
Enterprise clocked in with a 2.
All right.
Next Generation came in with 5. The original series with 4.5, and Deep Space Nine with 8. So it looks like it was Deep Space Nine, Next Gen, and TOS, and everything else was just kind of.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
So among 3 fans here who have seen all of it, I guess DS9 has the consensus.
Yeah,
I guess agree. It's the definitive word on the internet. It is hereby decreed.
Oh, at some point we should probably get into our favorite episodes and converse about those, because that would be good.
Yeah, definitely.
Sign me up for that. I'd be down for any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll just have a whole playlist of Star Trek stuff.
Yeah, we gotta narrow the search down to a series. Is it TOS or TNG or DS9 or whatever?
And make an essential list of maybe the top 5 episodes to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, Randy, for coming on and deep sink diving with us into a place where no kitchen sink has gone before.
Well, I was glad to take the helm of your kitchen sink today, and I'll be glad to come back again anytime you like me to.
You have the bridge, Randy.
Well, thank you. I do have the uniform.
Randy has the con. All right. That was awesome.
All right. Well, cue up the song, Eric, and engage.
Engage.
Make it so.
Make it so. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.